On today's episode of Curve Ahead, we've got Annie Scranton of Pace PR. And as always, I'm Brian Wiles, your host and the founder of Odyssey. Annie, thanks for your time today. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Annie Pace Scranton. I'm the founder and CEO of Pace Public Relations.
Can you tell me a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start Pace?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up wanting to be a TV news anchor and reporter. I grew up watching Katie Couric on the Today Show and loved her. I wanted to be her. Went to college and got a degree from a liberal arts college, Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, and quickly started working in national TV news as a producer. Realized that I liked TV news, but maybe didn't love it, and therefore did not want to move to a small city in the middle of the country to get started to be on air, which is kind of the normal trajectory for a lot of news anchors. So stayed in New York on the production side, and I worked at most of the major cable networks, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, Good Morning America, Today Show. And then really, it was not an inspiration that led me to start my business. It was that I got laid off. The show I was working on got canceled, and I found myself without a job. So I sent an email to everyone in my inbox saying, "Help, I need a job." I was like 29. No, I was, yeah. How old was I? I don't know. Around there, around 29. And then somebody wrote me back, a publicist who I had booked his clients on the show I was at CNBC. And he said, "Annie, you seem like you know a lot of people. And even though you don't have formal PR training, if you can get my client on any show on CNBC, I'll pay you 500 bucks." And his client was an author. He had just written a book about the markets. He was a stockbroker. And he looked great. And I sent his info to my friend who was producing for the 1 o'clock show. And she said, "Awesome. Can he come on tomorrow?" And that was my proverbial light bulb moment and kind of what started my whole journey forward as an entrepreneur and business owner.
It's incredible. Was it difficult for you to kind of go away from or have the adult realization that your childhood dream wasn't necessarily the thing you wanted to do?
I mean, if it was really my dream, I would have pursued it, but I was happy enough. I was learning a ton. I was working in New York in national TV news. I mean, so I definitely felt fulfilled. And yeah, I think I was okay in the moment. So it was all right for me to let go of that. Yeah.
Working in New York for any of the major agencies, right? That's kind of like you made it. So to go to one of the other markets, I think probably would have been a pretty big challenge for you. So how about I ask you this question? Because me coming from like more of a marketing background, how would you explain to me the difference between marketing and PR?
Well, marketing typically means it's paid in some capacity. PR is really about building a brand and an image through, I mean, now I was going to say through earned media, but now PR can incorporate paid and owned media as well. But marketing is kind of like you open up your inbox and you get an email from, your favorite skincare company. Oh, 25% off, whatever. That's a marketing email. PR is opening up Allure magazine and there's an article about why this particular skincare line is, growing so much and great for your skin and, is more about the brand. So it's a little bit of just the optics, I think, on the consumer side of how you're receiving information about a brand that you like. But in terms of the work that's being done, PR is more involved in the storytelling aspect of the brand, whereas marketing is really about driving click-throughs, I believe, and getting people to make a purchase, or take an action.
So image versus actually driving revenue.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, PR is a component that absolutely drives revenue, but
100%.
measuring that is more challenging because, as I was saying earlier, like PR is really involved in the overall image and reputation and brand awareness. And it's a much more qualitative industry, whereas opposed to if you're buying Facebook ads, which would be marketing for a brand, you would be able to see exactly the measurement of how effective your ad was based on, I did this, how many people clicked, how many people passed through and purchased, made a purchase or visited the website. With PR, if you get a feature in the New York Times, that online digital link is going to live for forever, you know? And so you're going to have a piece of press out there that's going to, when you Google, you know, however you optimize it then to be found in a search. So if there is a link back within a digital article, then yes, you can track that, of course. But if I was to get a client of mine on CNN or the Today Show, just watching that segment, there's not necessarily a way for a potential customer to take an action, but it's going to live online, and it's going to just help drive that overall reputation.
So, one other quick question. Liquid Death, are they a marketing disruptor or a PR disruptor or both?
I mean, for me, the thing that it was just, I mean, it's so obvious, but was so brilliant about it. I think it's both because of just their packaging. I mean, it's like, you know, you think you're buying like a 40 or something, you know? And so I think that like just resonated with so many people instead of walking around with like a little Pellegrino, like if you're at like a concert or a bar or something, you know, it's just like perhaps helping some people feel like they're fitting in more, you know, when they're choosing to not drink alcohol. So I would say disruptor in terms of image. Yeah, and then both in terms of PR. But that's marketing, you know, that's not like PR would be about like sort of how then they're telling the story around their packaging concept.
The campaign that I have stuck in my mind is one that I think that they did over the summer where they had teamed up with Yeti to create the coffin cooler. And
Oh, I don't know
just
that.
that, and it just gets so much press. So they did a PR stunt that was so effective that it generated more, or they did a marketing ad that was so effective that created its own buzz around the ad. That's why I
Now
asked the
that is
question.
an ad well done. And that does happen if it's done really, really well. And of course, in my line of work, we represent marketing agencies and ad agencies. And then when there is a really stellar, unique ad or one that's getting a lot of attention, we will then pitch that to ad trade publications like Ad Age, Adweek,
Mhm.
The Drum, Marketing Dive, et cetera, to get press around, you know, the ad and the agency that put it together.
So let's get back and talk about Pace again. So I noticed Pace had gotten a couple of awards consistently over the last few years. What do you think sets your agency apart in such a competitive industry?
It's probably not any one thing, but I think my background as a TV news producer and being the head of the agency and sort of running it as maybe those in production or TV news come at their job has been helpful and given us a competitive edge in TV news. Whatever you did yesterday is out the window. It's all about producing today, getting someone on the air today, putting a new show on, dealing with the day of news. And while, of course, we have very long-term clients with thoughtful year-long strategies behind them, we do attack each day as though, like, what are we going to do for our clients today? How are we going to involve them in the news cycle, in the conversation? And TV news producers are also really results oriented. When I was a booker for all those years, I couldn't just not have a guest for my anchored interview. I had to find somebody. I had to come up with a plan. I had to make it work. And I think we have that mindset. Even though we're nearly 15 years in business, we still have kind of this like scrappy startup mentality. And I think that our clients appreciate that in particular because PR is one of those industries where there's a lot of bad reputations. I don't want to say bad actors, but there's just some reputational issues. It can be quite costly, and it's not really there's not a lot of guarantees because we're pitching real reporters and real media outlets. We can't control how or if they choose to cover our clients. But I think because of, the media background that myself and several other of my staff bring to the table and that work ethic, that does set us apart.
Are you saying attacking every day is how you continue to challenge yourself and your team to put out award-winning work?
I think it's part of it. I do. I think we always go with every client or every project with a multi-pronged approach. A client's going to come to us and they're going to say, we have the launch of this product and we want a ton of press around it. Okay, great. But can we also incorporate thought leadership from the CEO? Is there a really cool founder story that we can also tell? What are industry trends that we can have someone from the organization weigh in a subject matter expert sort of position? By taking a 360 view of the client and the brand and what their goals are, all of those pieces work in conjunction, which lead us to be successful. But newsjacking, as I would refer to it, like sort of day of trends and what's happening, is absolutely, I think, a reason of how we can stay competitive and get great results for our clients. But I also think I've worked quite hard at building a culture of our staff where junior members feel supported by their managers and more senior level folks, and where us at the senior level are very open and willing and wanting to learn from our more junior members as well. So, it's not like there's any one thing, right? But you try to do the best you can in all those different ways.
On that line of learning from different generations, how has social media changed in how you deliver PR for an organization?
Social media, I mean, when I first started, social media was like not really what it is today. So now it's one of those prereqs where you got to have it, you got to be doing it. I think if you're a consumer brand, social media is much more important and means something different, because it's much more linked to your customer base. For a corporate client, you're going to be more on LinkedIn and putting out thought leadership from your CEO or from your founder. And that is likely going to be more impactful in helping you court investors or potential partners or business opportunities. So it's not a one size fits all, but we certainly pay close attention and can give guidance on our client social media and how that interacts and folds into our larger PR strategy. You have to think of all those parts as one in order to just maximize the efforts.
So Pace has grown significantly since its inception. What has been some of the most rewarding and challenging aspects of scaling the business?
Well, I think rewarding is, I never thought I would be a business owner. I never set out to have a PR agency, and have all these cool clients. It is truly rewarding to me just on an ongoing daily basis that I built this company almost 15 years in with no business experience. I never took a business class. I don't have an MBA. So it's kind of cool, that this is where I am now. I think also we just work with a lot of clients who are doing good on this planet. And so it feels nice to be able to help spread their message and help them grow their business for a greater good. So it's nice to be able to use my voice and my company's experience for causes and purposes that we believe in. Challenging, yeah. I mean, there's too many challenges for me to list in the time we have together. But when you're at my size agency, which we have about 20 people all in, it's a lot of people to manage. I mean, there's just a lot of personalities, a lot of dynamics. We have more than 40 clients, all of them with different goals and slightly different PR plans and strategies. So it's challenging to keep our group as the one cohesive unit that's constantly helping each other, both peer to peer, but also peer to client and client to client, and just I think that's one of the reasons why we're successful and we have such a great retention rate is because we're thinking bigger picture, not just linear, on one narrow lane for any of our clients. But yeah, being a business owner is not easy. I mean, especially last year, there was kind of an economic downturn. we had a tough year. We had to do some layoffs, which is it was horrible. But so but that's what you sign up for. When you're going to be a business owner and leader, not every year is going to be the best year you ever had.
You had mentioned having 40 plus clients, and I assume that they're fairly diverse. So how do you tailor your strategies to be relevant to each?
Well, we have a new client questionnaire that we ask all of our clients to fill out that drives us in that beginning stages of building a strategy. But we try to ask the question, what are your goals in the media and for your overall company in as many different ways as we can and throughout the course of our engagement? Because that's really what's going to drive it. Like I had this professor in grad school who quoted Alice in Wonderland, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it's like, what do you want? What do you want to see out of this? What do you hope the outcome is? And then we'll work backwards to build our strategy. I think that's the only way to do it effectively. And certainly then by sharing it with the client, getting their feedback and incorporating it into it. And then the follow-up of having those regular meetings, those regular touch bases as well to make sure that you're staying on track. And, making sure you're working on the vision that is in line with what the client wants, not just maybe what's driving your own, personal desires, as you're setting forth in your workday.
Is that sometimes a challenge balancing your desires versus the client vision?
Well, sure. I mean, we all of us are individuals and we all have our own, let's say, political viewpoints that we share. Well, not every client I have shares the same politics as I do. So it's important to remember that. It's important to remember all of the stakeholders of our clients and sort of what their customers, with their board members, with their investors, sort of envision and consider to be on the roadmap to success. So, it's a balancing act between wanting to do good in this world and leave behind the legacy that you want to leave behind, but also making sure you're giving the best business counsel, and media advice that you can to your clients.
How do you professionally push back in some of those situations where there's a disagreement between you and a client where there may not be a right answer, but from your expertise in the field, there is a better approach?
I mean, again, it's not going to be a one size fits all, but PR is a lot of psychology. It's dealing with a lot of different personality types and using your judgment and business acumen and years of experience to make the best judgment call on how to deliver that news. However, I think being as direct as possible always pays off. I think being authoritative while also sort of being receptive to feedback is important as well. But at the end of the day, clients are paying us for our guidance and our counsel. And so we're going to give it to them, and not be driven by fear or any other emotion. But delivery and timing is everything because, we're all people at the end of the day and everybody still can have emotions or feelings about, being told, hey, I think we need to change course or this isn't really working. Some of those conversations are certainly delicate, but if you're rooted also in data or metrics or just tons of anecdotal reasons as to why you're suggesting what you're suggesting, you can feel more confident about the plan that you're giving.
I would 100% agree. There's never one size fits all when it comes to inserting your expertise in the domain that you have. And early and often when with bad news is usually the best way.
You don't want to get too far down the road and then there's a really big problem, It's like with a crisis. It's so much easier to avoid a crisis than to try to fix it after the fact.
So let's talk about the PR industry as a whole. You've been doing this for quite a while. I think you had mentioned like 15 years.
Mhm.
So you've seen the industry evolve over that time. Where do you think the industry is going in the next five?
We're definitely going towards more of that like multifaceted, integrated approach. That's what I think more and more clients are wanting to see, where, they want to make sure whatever money they have set aside for PR, marketing, comms is touching all of those different areas. And having the flexibility to ebb and flow. Okay, one moment we're going to spend more on digital. The next one, there's a moment we're going to put it more towards earned efforts, et cetera. I think earned media is having a moment and not really a great one. It's just there's more and more news outlets that are doing layoffs, that are shuttering, that are disbanding coverage. And as a former TV producer, that is really sad to see. But I think it's just evident that with the influx of social media and all the different platforms, especially the younger demographics, are just not tuning in to news and content in the way that I did, when I was their age. So while traditional PR and earned media, I believe, will always be a critical component of any successful PR campaign. It's becoming where it used to just be, could be the full picture. Now it's becoming one slice, of the overall picture. So I think having an integrated approach is really important.
It's an interesting perspective, right? I didn't necessarily think about all the media outlets who have been shuttering, although I did work for an organization who supported print media for quite a while. And that was one of the industries. That was actually one of the reasons I had left the organization, is just kind of seeing how much consolidation was happening in print, that I wasn't sure the long-term outlook of continuing my employment there.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that there's going to be more and more of that consolidation with all news outlets. Do you think that that's going to impact how you do your business?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do think it's going to impact it. I think we've been doing a lot more of the on the content development side that our clients can use for LinkedIn, or their own marketing materials, wherein we're still storytellers and the experts at positioning their messaging. So it's just about how we think about our clients' needs when we're doing that, when we're putting together that content or that messaging. And thinking that through in a bigger way than just earned.
So, next question for you. How has becoming a parent influenced your leadership style or business perspective?
I mean, I think it's just, I don't even know if it's like being a business leader, but I think there's no substitute for just years of experience. And I've worked with just a lot of different people over the years, from working at big, big companies like CNN or Fox, to now having dealt with thousands of clients over the course of these 15 years. That I think I think when you're a business leader, you really learn how to be a good listener. And I think that that's a big part of being successful. Everybody, or a lot of people, like to hear themselves talk, but it's actually, if you can be a good listener, that I think is the key to first developing a strong relationship with your customer or client that's rooted in trust. And from there, you can grow and expand.
I think that's an excellent point. I'm actually in the process of reading Never Split the Difference. And that's, I feel, one of the key concepts of that book is actively listening when you're having a conversation. And it's doing this with my wife the other day. It's sometimes a challenge because you both have your own perspectives that you want to add into the conversation, and you're not really hearing one another when it comes to the other person speaking. You're already figuring out the next thing you want to say.
It's always a good idea to stop, listen, and then try to regurgitate it back. Speak it back to the person. What I'm hearing you say is that you wish I would do the dishes more often without you bugging me about it.
That's called
Okay.
labeling. Yes. Also in the book. All right, next question. What advice would you give someone who's considering starting their own business? I know that we had touched on this a little bit earlier about it not necessarily being the easiest thing, but what advice would you give that person?
Ask for help on what you don't know. Um, by way of example, when I was starting a business, I had no idea what to do except the work that was involved or what I thought was the work that was involved. But I had a friend who is an attorney, and he helped to very simply incorporate me in the state of New York as business. I didn't know how to do a website, so I outsourced somebody who could build a website for me. Asked recommendations for who could be my accountant. What do I need to know? But probably beyond that, the most important piece of advice is really figure out the money part of it because if you're not making money or you're losing money, you're not going to be in business for very long. So, I when I started my business, I still had a full-time job as a producer. So I had that safety net. Obviously, that's not possible for every single person who wants to go and start their business, but really think through your finances for like a year out. And if you decide to go on your business and say it doesn't work out, how's that going to impact you? When you come back into the workforce, that would probably be my top recommendation.
I think that that's great advice. Wish I would have considered that a little bit more in depth. We also, have a young son, which adds additional complications like daycare. So,
Not cheap. Yeah,
yeah.
not cheap at all. Yeah, I think that's so important. Like when I started Pace, I wasn't married, I didn't have a kid, I lived by myself in a studio apartment. There wasn't as much risk. I was 30 years old, so I still had a very long runway to work. So yeah, all of that I think are just really important facts and it's different for everybody, but I just like you could be the best at what you do, but if you don't have people who are willing to pay you, then what's the point? I mean, you unless you have a trust fund or something. So I would just say to really think through the money part as a first step.
If you don't have people who are willing to pay you, you just have a very expensive hobby.
Yeah. There you go. Which is also cool, but just be honest about that, and yeah, you'll be better off for it, I think.
All right. So the flip side of that, what is the worst career advice you've ever gotten?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I don't know that it was advice, but something I did that I wouldn't recommend doing again is, when you're first starting out, you're trying to get clients, right? You're trying to get business. And so I, like many business owners, may have offered a lower rate, a reduced rate for services. It can be really easy to get in that habit even after you started to prove yourself, and you have data and metrics to put a price point on the goods, the services that you're delivering. So I would say to not sell yourself short for too long. And usually, my other piece of advice is that if a client's really trying to talk you down significantly in money, it's probably not worth it.
How did you break that cycle of offering your services too cheaply?
You just, you have to just do it. You have to just start putting together proposals where whatever the number it was, charge 10% more, charge 50% more, whatever. I mean, you also use your judgment. Okay, this is a very small business who's coming for me for services as versus, a corporation. They're probably going to be able to spend more money on it, or to just really get more specific with the scope that you put together. That way you're not doing everything, throwing in everything and the kitchen sink into, a project. You're really staying in your lane, or tracking your hours. There's no right way. You just have to start doing it.
I think that's great advice. The last thing that I like to do in my podcast is give you an opportunity to plug anything that you're passionate about, whether that be Pace PR or a charity or anything. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, I'm a business owner, so I better plug my company. Yeah, I mean, Pace Public Relations, check us out, pacepublicrelations.com. I'm Annie Scranton. You can find me online very easily. If you are a brand, a business leader, a thought leader, a corporation or a small business, and you have a unique story, a unique capability. You're doing something different within the industry, or you're just doing something better than the rest. In all likelihood, having a presence in the media can be helpful for building legitimacy, credibility, and of course, brand building that can lead to sales and new customer acquisition. So we really work with solo practitioners, small to medium-sized businesses, all the way to large public corporations. So if you're thinking about PR or media, we're definitely a good potential first step.
Annie, awesome. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.